Gene Henley with the Chattanooga Times Free Press joins us now. Gene, how are you, sir?
I'm doing pretty well, man. Can you hear me over here?
I got you loud and clear, man. You look fantastic. You're definitely upping the looks department here with me and Caleb.
Well, I was actually pretty locked in on being here at 11 o'clock, but I had to get a haircut, so that's exactly. So all I got left is my looks, man. Everything else is pretty much gone.
You know what's funny is I've been looking at my hair all day thinking I can't believe I didn't get a haircut before the first game because this part's too long. That part they messed up the last time. But anyway, um, you're in a really unique position in that you covered Chattanooga, then you covered the Vols, and now you cover Chattanooga. So if you could just describe to me the biggest difference between those two levels of programs.
Um, I would say the size. I think size and depth are the two things. Like I remember, I covered Chattanooga from 2015 to 2018, and then I remember the very first practice. It was late in the 2018 season that I started covering Tennessee, and I remember going to a practice, and one of the first people I saw at that practice was Trey Smith, and I'm like, oh, there we go. Okay, I get it now. It's Chattanooga had a first round offensive lineman a couple years ago. His name is Cole Strange, who's about 6'5". I think he's probably or 6'4", 6'5", probably around 300 something pounds now. And then I saw Trey Smith, who was playing left tackle, who was like 6'6", like 330. And then I saw Wanye Morris, and then I saw Darnell Wright. And whereas Chattanooga may have one guy like that, Tennessee's average size on the offensive line is probably in the 300 something pound range, whereas Chattanooga's is around probably 280. Like they've got good guys, but Chattanooga's got good receivers. Their best receiver this year is a guy named Javon Watley, or Sam Phillips, but both of those guys are like 5'9", 5'10", 170, 165 in that range, whereas Tennessee's guys are considerably bigger. So it's really just more of a size and speed thing. I mean, not even speed. It's really just size, I think, and obviously depth, which is, I think, one of the biggest things that'll happen tomorrow. Is just, Chattanooga can go probably 22 for 22 and at least be respectable. But when it gets into like the backups and stuff like that, Chattanooga, Tennessee may have a backup who in a year or two may be playing for Chattanooga, whereas it will be. I would find it hard to believe that Chattanooga has anybody that could play at Tennessee's level.
Yeah, Gene, great to meet you, by the way. And I wanted to ask you a little bit about. It's funny you bring that up because I covered yesterday. I was looking at the key players for Chattanooga for Vols fans to watch out for in case they make this a game at all. And I know Reed Williams and Marlon Taylor were both all Southern Conference, but I left them off the list because I feel like if Chattanooga is going to give Tennessee any sort of trouble, it's going to be at skill positions, right? I mean, even though those are all conference linemen, I just don't see any way at this level they can hang in the trenches if it becomes that type of game.
Over offensive line wise, I would say you're probably right. I mean, Chattanooga does have multiple linemen that have like Amarian Krim will get the start at left tackle. He went to Houston out of high school. The right tackle's his name is Dave Mono. He started his career at Purdue. Like Reed Williams, I think just is a local kid who just really, really wanted to stay at Chattanooga, but he probably could have had some opportunities. They're starting right guard. I don't know. He got banged up last week. This guy named Bryce Goodner that played at Virginia Tech. They've got guys who were Power 5 level players. Now they've only got 4 of them, and so I guess to that point you're probably pretty accurate. But as far as defensive linemen, I mean Marlon Taylor's 6'2", 330 and can move. Quay Wiggles was committed to Georgia Tech at one point out of high school, and I think there was a coaching change or whatever. But I think they can kind of compete somewhat on the lines. Plus, I mean, I know as far as like Tennessee's offensive line, everybody says it's fixed. Get past Cooper Mays and get back to me in terms of like how good. I'm not acting like Chattanooga's about to dominate Tennessee's offensive line. I just don't think much is going to be gleaned from tomorrow's game. And I don't think that there's such an overwhelming factor that Chattanooga will be able to have no success there. But you're probably right as far as the skill players. Chattanooga does have some skill players. They've got some guys that can make plays. They've got some receivers. They've got a couple running backs that I'll be intrigued to see. One kid from Florida transferred in who actually played D2 ball. I don't know how he ended up D2 because he's really explosive. And another kid from Alabama that's really talented. So I will be intrigued to see just kind of how it works out. I mean, I predicted Tennessee to win like 65-10 or something. But I do think that Chattanooga can have some success, which I think, in my opinion, especially the first game of the season, I think all you want to do is walk away with some stuff that says, okay, we can kind of use this and take it to the rest of the season.
So I wanted to talk a little bit of recruiting because we do believe now that Boo Carter is probably at the very least going to compete to start tomorrow. And I think he is going to start in the game, and he is from Chattanooga. Amari Jefferson, also from Chattanooga, went to Alabama. How big of a deal do you think, from your perspective now being in Chattanooga and seeing Boo Carter, how much under Josh Heupel relative to other coaches is Tennessee prioritizing the Chattanooga area and those key guys down there?
Yeah, I think certainly. Like there's a lot, and I'll be intrigued to see what happens in some of these future years, because I think a lot of the guys that are probably at Tennessee's level, they are Chattanooga kind of in, location only. Always say people, Walker Valley High School here in my hometown of Cleveland, Tennessee, gets to claim that Jock McClendon was a Walker Valley grad. Everybody knows he played at Baylor. Whereas a lot of the Baylor and Macaulay guys now are like Canadians and stuff. Like they're not actually from Chattanooga. But in Boo's case, Boo was obviously a Chattanooga product who played his last year. I mean, he basically, no disrespect, but just basically used Bradley Central High School for 6 months and then graduated. And I think he's going to do amazing things in Tennessee because, again, I bring up my hometown. I mean, Cleveland, Tennessee. A lot of history from the early 90s of guys that had opportunities to play at Tennessee, although it may not have worked out in the end. And Boo is kind of like that sort of elite sort of prospect. When the few times I watched him play, he is an elite level talent. I'll be intrigued to see because there is some talent here. I've always argued it when I covered Tennessee. I always bragged about, the Cleveland and Chattanooga talent, specifically Cleveland. I've always known that there's some talent that can play at that level. And it's good to see that some guys are starting to get opportunities. Boo, Marcus Gorey, I think will eventually get an opportunity to play there. We'll see if that was just a one-off last year with those two particular prospects, or if there's more talent coming up the ranks. Is there like a Baylor running back or something, I think, that may be committed to Tennessee for next year? I don't cover a lot of high schools, so I don't really know, but I feel like there's a guy from Baylor that may be committed to Tennessee or something like that. And that just speaks to, what is starting to come to Chattanooga, because a lot of the talent in Chattanooga will go to Baylor, Macaulay, Cleveland, or Bradley. School systems, obviously opportunities, exposure. I mean, Bradley has certainly, it's funny, somebody pseudo sham was talking about Dante Hickey, was one of the guys I was talking about Cleveland, but like there's certainly some guys I think coming up through the ranks that will have an opportunity to play that level. And it's good to see that Heupel jumped on it and kind of is going to kind of lock down that talent that maybe some prior coaches in Chattanooga or Tennessee did not.
Dave, you're muted. Let
me make sure you guys can hear me. How about now?
I got you.
Okay, got you. So specifically, Gene, when you talk about this offense, because it is the first game, but people probably haven't seen Chattanooga a lot even last year. How would you describe this offense? What are their goals? I mean, we have a pretty good idea of what Josh Heupel wants to do, but I don't know as much about Rusty Wright and what he wants to do offensively.
Yeah, Rusty wants to make good decisions. He wants his quarterbacks to make the right throws. He wants his running backs to run the right way. He wants his offensive linemen to do the right things. Like, they're not the type that are going to – they want to be efficient. Like, I think last year they had the number one Pro Football Focus had Chattanooga ranked as the number one pass blocking unit in the country, like all levels. Like, I think maybe Georgia or somebody was number two. Like he wants to be efficient with the ball. Like they're not going to, the way they play tomorrow is not going to be any different than they will play against Furman. They play Georgia State next week, Mercer, teams at their level, and their ETSU teams in their conference. They want to be efficient with the ball. They want their quarterback to make the right reads, right decisions. They want to run it. And then if they have a lead in the fourth quarter, they want to be able to salt the game away with their running backs. I mean, that's typically what everybody wants to do, but Chattanooga's just going to go like 3 receiver sets, sometimes 2 tight ends. They're trying to take care of the ball and not give the defense opportunities to take the ball back and put their defense back out there.
We had Rusty on yesterday. He doesn't seem like the type of coach that would have something special cooked up just for Tennessee. He sees the big picture. Sure, he wants to win the game, but it's not like he's going to show everything for Southern Conference opponents.
Yeah, I think I've heard some people talk about what Austin Peay did last year. I think that's just that particular coach who's just a little weird, maybe a little crazy. I think he's at UTSA now. It's interesting. His last game was actually against Chattanooga in the playoffs. But no, Rusty, because again, to your point, he said he sees the big picture. He is trying to, they may lose. I'm predicting they're going to lose a lot because I just think they're going to play the way that they would always play. And also thinking in the day, Tennessee is going to ultimately overwhelm them in the second half as the game goes on. But I do think that they will pull some stuff out of this because they think they've got a good team this year. They believe that they have a team that can compete for a conference championship in a good league because, as people saw last night, Western Carolina was picked 3rd in the league, and they hung with NC State, who obviously Tennessee plays next week, for 2.5 quarters. And to me, that's more indicative of Western Carolina. I get it. NC State will get the headlines, but Chattanooga wants to be conference champions. They've got some stuff they've got to figure out as far as their team. They've got some questions at edge rusher. They sent a guy to the NFL, Jay Person. I think he just got cut from the Bucks. 2-time All-American, another edge rusher is graduated that was 3-time All-Conference. They're not 100% sure exactly what they're going to do there. Their corners both graduated from last year. They're trying to figure that position out. They've got some stuff they've got to figure out. So you can go out there and just play, mind games and do 25 trick plays like you're trying to win the game, and you don't actually figure anything out about your team. And I don't think Rusty's going to do that because, again, to your point, Rusty sees the big picture. I got to see what this team is going to be. I've got to see, the left tackle. He moved from right guard last year. We think he's a left tackle. Let's see how he holds up against James Pierce and those guys. We've got to see how these guys, hold up in certain situations. And so I don't think you'll see anything special. And if that means you just get blown out, then it is what it is. But I would, if it's me, and I think Rusty's kind of similar in that, or I'm similar to Rusty in the fact that I'd much rather get blown out and know I did things the way I want to do them for the next 11 games than keep it close and have people pat us on the back Monday on Sportsmanlike or First Take or whatever the show is. And, I'd much rather have people calling in Tony Basilio's show at 4:00 on 4:00 on Saturday saying, man, we whooped their tail, but hey, that number such and such is pretty good for them. They've got some pretty good players, and I think that would be a win for Chattanooga, in my opinion.
Well, we would certainly prefer them to be a part of our program. The Last Look brought to you by Campbell Cunningham Taylor and Hahn Vision Center. But either way, I think there is going to be some incredible reaction to this game. Even if it's one-sided, I think it just raises Tennessee's expectation levels from their fan base. If it's close at all, then Tennessee fans are going to worry. Gene, a great job. You kind of hinted at this, but how would you predict this?
I think everybody's asked, I've just said something along the lines of 63-10. I think Chattanooga will have some success. They may even score a couple more points, but they scored 10 last year against Alabama with the backup quarterback. Their starter, Artopius, who's healthy again, was out, for that game, and they scored 10 and had a nice little touchdown run, had a long pass play to the Watley kid. I think they'll have some success. And it's the first game. You never know what's going to happen. I still think Tennessee kind of wins relatively easy. But Chattanooga gets some stuff to take home and say, hey, we did this. Remember when I did this against Tennessee and Neyland?
Good stuff, Gene. We appreciate it. How do we follow your work?
You can follow me on on Twitter at Gene Henley 3. I'm trying to get more active again on there. Kind of been dormant for a while, but more active on Twitter, Gene Henley 3. TimesFreePress.com, Gene Henley. Just check my stuff out. I've got some other stuff I'm working on, but I'm not putting that stuff out there because it's not really football related, and it's not really done yet. So until then, I'm not going to say anything else about it, but I've got some other stuff working. So I appreciate y'all having me, guys. Thank you much.
Thanks, buddy. Gene Henley, Chattanooga Times Free Press.